When you first start growing flowers, I think one thing you always really worry about is, will I have flowers next week? Because when you walk through and you harvest them all, you're kind of like, what am I going to have next week? Because likely you'll have orders. And so today we're going to talk about when you should start your flowers and what flowers you should grow so that you will have blooms all season long.
Welcome to Learn Cut Flower Growing. Whether you are an inspiring green thumb, a busy mompreneur, or simply seeking a passion, you are in the right place. If I had to do it all over again, knowing what I know now, I would do it smarter. And that's what I'm sharing here. I want to take years off your learning and help you bloom with confidence in your garden. Each episode, I'll share practical tips and ideas, heartfelt stories, and expert insights to help you grow and find balance in your journey. I'm Paula Rice, your cut flower farmer guide. I've been growing for 16 years, and I'm an expert in my field, literally. So grab your gardening gloves and listen to me while you work, or grab a cup of coffee and relax as you learn to manage a cut flower garden and business.
Flower seeds can be sometimes tricky to start. They all require something a little bit different, but once you know what the recipe is to make it break dormancy, you are going to be flying. You won't be afraid of any flower seed. So today, we're going to be talking about how to produce your own seedlings. Okay, when it comes to planting flower seeds, they all have a different little recipe to get them to break dormancy. Vegetables, I would say, are pretty much, you can cover them with soil. I feel like I never had a problem with sprouting any vegetable seeds, but when I became a cut flower grower, I was like, why is this not sprouting? This is fresh seed. It's a new packet. What is going on? And so all of your flower seeds have different requirements for breaking dormancy, and they have different needs to make them do that. For instance, snapdragons need light, okay? And that seed of a snapdragon is so crazy small. In fact, when it comes to flowers, you can get a lot of ridiculously small seed. And so when they're small like that, a lot of times I kind of make the assumption, that this guy needs light to make him break dormancy and start to grow. Some things need darkness, like bupleurum. Like literally, I will seed bupleurum into a tray and cover it with a black plastic bag and kind of keep it cool. And that's what will help it break dormancy. And so once you know all of the different ways that each particular seed needs, you can grow anything. Even if it comes to perennials and they have different stratification processes or vernalization processes, once you know that, then when you seed it, you can put that seed, that tray, in the environment that it needs so that it can grow. By far, most of the seeds just need 68 to 72 degrees, and they can have light or not light. They don't actually really care. And so when they say cover or uncover, I will just sprinkle vermiculite over the top and then water it. I like to water that vermiculite because if you have a seed that is sitting on the top of the soil because it needs light or it can't be buried very deep, the vermiculite, if it's been wet down, will keep the moisture on the seed really, really well. If you have things like larkspur and nigella and bupleurum that need cooler temperatures and darkness to sprout, I just put them in my cooler that is turned off. You will find a place around you that is appropriate. It might be your garage floor. It might just be your garage with the lights turned off because it's not heated out there. And that will give them the amount of time they need to be cool to sprout. So you just will seed something up and you're like, okay, you like light, you like bottom heat of 70 degrees. I'm going to put you on my heat mats, or I'm going to put you, for me, I put them on top of my lights because that gives them heat and it actually works perfect. If you are bupleurum, I seed you up. I'm like, okay, yep, you're going into my dark cooler or you're going into the shop. I'll just put the whole tray where it needs to be. I know for a while there when I was really, really small, you could just put those seeds like larkspur seeds and things that needed cool and needed to be cool and moist for a little while before it would break dormancy, people would sprinkle them into a wet paper towel and just kind of put them in the refrigerator and then bring them out. They literally will even sprout in your refrigerator, and you have to be careful. Probably a coffee filter is a better idea than a paper towel, because that little seed will start to try to grow into the paper towel, and it becomes really difficult to get it off and delicate. In fact, you almost can't. But if you use the coffee filter, you can. So the idea is that they would take the seed, put it in a coffee filter, put it in a Ziploc bag, but leave a little bit of a hole because it needs to breathe, and then place that bag in the environment to kind of break that dormancy, and they watch the seeds, and if they start to sprout, then they would go ahead and plant them. Boom, you're going. That works pretty good if you're small and things like that. For me, I'm like, I've got the space, I'm just going to seed you up and put you where you go. Some things I will even seed up and take them straight out to the greenhouse with the greenhouse not being on. Because I know from my experience, just looking in the garden, I'm like, okay, the bachelor buttons, they're just totally going to, from the seed that fell last year, the bachelor buttons are totally just going to grow and do their thing. So are the sunflowers. So are just a million of little plants that just needed to be cool and moist for a little while. And then the sun comes up and warms the soil up to a certain temperature, and then boom, it goes. So for things like that, I literally, if I didn't have to have optimal growing conditions, I literally could just seed them up in my trays and go put them out in the greenhouse. And they're just going to do their thing when they're ready. When the greenhouse is like, okay, I'm cold, but now the sun's out and I'm warming up. And this guy's like, oh, I'm going to sprout. And so that's kind of fun to do it that way too. So when it comes to flowers, you're always thinking about that. What does this little light need? Does it need warm and light? Does it need dark and light? Does it need cool and dark? Or does it need cool with light to sprout? And the best place to figure out all of this truly, literally, is your seed catalogs. I mean, you can go online to seed databases and things like that, but this is Johnny's seed catalog, and it is fantastic. It'll have all of the germination requirements in it, and it will tell you, okay, this will typically, at these temperatures, under these conditions, it will take 8 days to sprout or 14 days to sprout. And that's really going to help when you go to plan your seeding schedule or your seeding, because you're going to look at the packet and you're going to say, oh, it says to start seed 6 weeks before I plant outside. And so this will give you all of the germination data that you need. And most of them do. I just love that. So follow those and you will definitely succeed. When it comes to choosing the flowers that you want to grow as a cut flower, let me just point back to Johnny's. All of their flowers in the Johnny's seed catalog. And let me see their website here, you guys. I want to tell you their website. It is johnnyseeds.com. JOHNNYSEEDS.com. The back of their catalog, all of their flowers are good cut flowers. So voila. You instantly have a cut flower list, and you do not have to overthink this. All of them are fantastic cut flowers. And then, of course, once you start to grow them, you'll start to test and decide what you love and what you hate, which ones have better vase lives and which ones don't. If you pick up a seed catalog that has vegetables and seeds in it, and typically it doesn't have a list of cut flowers, there will be a cut flower symbol. And so if it has little scissors on it, then that generally means that it makes a good cut flower and that it will have a decent vase life. And then, of course, we talked about how you are looking for something that has a stem length, but we've already talked about that in a previous podcast. And when you are thinking about ordering seeds and starting your seed schedules, one of the funnest things to do is when you start getting all of your seed catalogs in the mail, for me at least, I'm always like, ooh, what's new? What's new out there? What are those breeders doing? Because they're always doing amazing things and the colors are always changing. So I would look, like this one isn't necessarily a cut flower catalog, but I will look through this and I'll be like, okay, I'm going to look for stem length. I'm going to look for a cut flower symbol. And then also be careful, are you buying seeds or are you buying actually a plant? And things like that. So that's how you look for those. And that's just a great hack on just open it up and find out what makes a good cut flower and build your cut flower list. And here's just another example. Johnny's sent all the new varieties that are coming out. And if I'd really like to get the new varieties and test them and see what I love, I think that's just how we get into all the new color palettes that are becoming available. All right, so we've talked about the seeds and what they need, whether you're going to cover them with vermiculite or not, where you're going to put them so that they will break dormancy and sprout and be amazing for you. But there are a few other things that you need to consider. So another strategy, you're going to do a lot of seeding inside to kind of get flowers as soon as you possibly can. But there's just going to come a point where you actually can do some direct seeding outside. You know, the soil temperature has improved enough and you can work your soil, and then you'll kind of stop direct seeding and you're going to stop seeding inside and you're going to turn towards direct seeding, which is kind of like for sunflowers and larkspur and things like that. I actually don't do that very much because I have such weed pressure that I prefer to just do plugs all of the time. So I succession start everything inside except for sunflowers and possibly larkspur. Sunflowers, with the minute we can stop doing it inside and we can do it outside and plant every 2 weeks. That's really great. They're such a vigorous grower. You can usually hoe around them and beat back the weeds pretty easily. Okay, when you're thinking about what flowers to grow, like you're in the catalog and you're like, yikes, this might be a lot to buy every variety that is in here. You do want to think about where you're planning to sell your flowers, okay? Because if you are planning to have a little grocery store or do a wholesaler, then, you know, you're going to buy certain varieties. You're going to buy certain varieties that are tall, and you're going to stick to those. And if you are just a farmer florist, then you can do anything when you're a farmer florist, because you're going to pick up little vases. You're going to buy vases or pick them up cheap at the thrift store, however you want to. We actually have a system here where I let people know if they are having a yard sale or getting rid of vases and they just bring them, they can put them by my mailbox. They can put them in the front of the farm stand and we will happily take them. And that way we are able to pass on the savings to other people. And we just charge for the fact that we had to clean them up and store them, but they can be a lot cheaper. And then we can just pack a lot of flowers in them for people and really wow our customers with a lot of flowers. Because I have to say sometimes, and I don't want to put the florist industry down, but I remember starting this and I'm like learning how the florists have to price and do all of that. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is almost the art of no flowers, right? So with me, I like to be abundant and I don't worry about it too much when it's coming from my garden. Basically, if you're growing for grocery, you're going to be a little bit more limited. But if you're just growing for yourself, your own farm stand, you can have lots more variety. And we've talked about all of the seed catalogs, everything you can do there. Looking at my notes, I want to make sure I hit everything on this part of what to grow. Okay, extra considerations is when you're going to move your plugs out into the field, we are thinking about soil temperature. Even when you are going to direct seed, there are things that you can do to kind of manipulate that process. So for instance, if you are going to cut the plastic, let's say you have to replace the plastic on your hoop house, keep that plastic. Because if you lay that plastic out with sandbags on it, you can actually solarize your soil and heat it up a lot sooner, because the soil temperature has a lot to do with how vigorously your plant is actually going to grow. I mean, it just needs to be a certain temperature. So for me, in the fall, I would lay down raised beds in the fall for spring planting. And they would be covered with black plastic. And that was really nice because that field was sitting there waiting for me, heating up. The sun was hitting it. They were raised beds. I loved that. So think about how you can manipulate the heat of the soil. You could probably even lay black plastic and get that soil to heat up, take it off, plant, cover with frost protection, and those plants are going to just hit the ground and thrive. So if you do things like that, that's going to be great. You know, I'm not huge on raised beds. I have the plastic mulch layer, so I do have raised beds. But if I was to do that again, I would not buy the raised bed shaper. I don't need it where I live. I don't have standing water issues. And so I kind of regret that because, you know, it's just because we mow down the rows and then when you go up on the side, that's totally getting weeds on it. And we have to kind of weed eat that and stuff like that to keep that down. So I wish they were just flat beds and I could just kind of run my lawnmower wheel along the flat beds. So for me, I don't do raised beds with wood around them or tin or nothing like that. That to me is a lot of work, a lot of expense when the good old earth seems to do the trick. For me, at least. I'm sure people have other situations, but gosh, don't overthink it. Soil grows things. It really grows things, and you can be adding things organic material. If you've got really sandy soil, clay, it grows things. It still grows things. I would say I'm clay. I am not perfect soil at all. This loam. I've got areas on the farm are that way, and then I've got areas where it was farmed and the topsoil blew away and it's sandy and it just needs a lot more water. And if I can mulch it on top of it, that's fantastic. So be thinking of that when you have raised beds versus flat ground. Is the soil going to heat up sooner? You could even plant your seeds and then cover it, solarize it, and that get them going, popping up and then protecting them. Lots of things you can do to kind of manipulate the season and get to market a lot sooner. And then when you go to plant your seeds outside, can you protect that seed from frost? We're actually going to talk about that more in the next episode. I thought this episode just needed to be kind of like, oh, here's the things you need to think about, like to get your seeds to sprout. And am I going to be growing these on in a little hoop house, or am I going to be planting them directly outside? Because that all factors into when you're going to start that seed. But just knowing that that seed has a funky little recipe and that something might take actually 14 days to germinate. And you need to know that, and you're going to want to document that on your seeding chart. As you list out, you're going to go to the catalog, you're going to order your seeds. You guys, and here's another thing. Let me just quick throw this in. The grocery store, Walmart, all those places, they have great packets of seed. Okay, you don't have to go buy crazy expensive seed. I am seeing crazy things happen. And it's like, I have no problem walking into Walmart, or I'm in the grocery department and I'm like, ooh, a seed rack, and I'll look, I'm like, oh, well, that's a pretty zinnia. Oh yeah, it's long enough, good stem length. I'm going to buy that. So if you're just going to start something out and be really low key, plus it doesn't give you 100, 200, 2,000 seeds. It's just a nice starter packet. And sometimes you don't need that. You don't want to spend a ton of money. And so just, my goodness, feel free to look at those seed packets and buy seeds that are good cut flower right there from the grocery store. We do not have to overthink this. And our final consideration here, we are starting the seeds. We know what they need to germinate. We know how many days it's going to take for them to sprout up. And then we're thinking about the cell size that we chose to grow that seed into. I've shared with you before how I do 200s. You can do 128s and all of that. But just know that the size of the plug that you choose to grow it in will determine how long it takes to make a plug. Okay, a tiny little seedling with a root wad. Okay, if I use a 200, that's a smaller cell, it's going to produce something a lot faster than maybe a 50. Okay, and that will affect your timing for that to hit the field. Basically, eventually you'll just kind of settle into something, and that'll be what you use. Because how you optimally grow that plug affects how fast it's going to grow and be ready for the field too. So I grow it in the studio on lights, and then at some point I need to kick it out into my greenhouse. Am I heating my greenhouse optimally? Okay, am I keeping it at 65, 75 degree days and 55 degree nights? Or am I just trying to save money? And no, I'm minimally heating it. For me, I would say I minimally heat it. I just try to keep it from freezing at night. So that's going to affect the amount of time that it takes to produce a plug for you to plant into the field. If you are making sure all the conditions are optimal, it's going to hit the field and be ready a lot sooner. And if you're not, it's not going to be as soon. Your grow time is going to be a little bit longer. All those choices you just need to know about and know what you want to do. So we have, am I heating the greenhouse optimally? What size cell plug am I using? How long does it take the seed to germinate? And that kind of thing. I don't want this to be confusing. It's really not. Start out with the simple seeds. They poof. Literally, I will seed things on Monday and I will come back by Thursday. They're up. I'm pulling them off the lights, putting them under the lights, and I'm seeding another thing. Poof! Literally, Saturday, Sunday, they're up. There's a few things that take more time, but it really is a fast process. And you're going to catch on really soon which ones take more time, like the perennials and things like that. Who needs vernalization? Who needs to be moved where it goes? So it's really fun to get all that figured out. Next week, we're going to be talking about getting the plugs into the field. Like we're going to challenge this thought a little bit more, because we're actually going to think in advance of our target planting out dates and how that actually affects our seeding, which is what we just talked about today. So you have to tune into that, because we got to know the future to know the present. And it's really easy. It's really fun. You guys, This is great. Start your seeds, buy your seeds the next time you're at your store. Make sure you start something, even if it's just in a pot by your front door, because if you plant some cut flowers in your pot at the front door, you're going to be able to bring them in and enjoy them. And you've started something. You've just started learning, even if it is just for yourself. Thank you so much for tuning in. I want you to hit that follow button so you get next week's episode, because you have to know the beginning of the story. All right. Have a great week. God bless you all. Thanks so much.